A WYFF News 4 special presentation, 10 Years of Chronicle.
Hello, and welcome to 10 Years of Chronicle. I'm Jane Robelo. In the spring of 2009, we aired our first Chronicle program here on WYFF4. Chronicle, Paul's Gift, documented the process of organ and tissue donation from donor to recipient. One donor could save as many as 8 lives through organ donation and improve the lives of 75 or more through tissue and cornea donation. We followed one family's decision to give the gift of life to others, and we met those who received this precious gift. Here's Carol Clark with the story of Paul and Savitz.
All right.
And surrounded by that love, Kaylin walks with Paul to the operating room. Most families who choose to donate their loved one's organs say goodbye at the hospital bed. Kaylin wanted to stay with Paul as long as possible. She holds his hand as he's wheeled down the halls to surgery.
I'll tell him.
The recovery teams have all arrived from Memphis and Charleston and Chapel Hill. They meet Paul's gurney. They're ready. But everyone pauses to mark his life and his gifts and to allow a wife to say goodbye.
No one else is here. You were always mine. I love you. When we were going down that hallway, that was probably one of the saddest days of my whole entire life, knowing that I had to say goodbye. This was my final goodbye to Paul.
A final kiss.
It was still hard saying goodbye, and I remember saying to him, "You were always my hero, so now go be others' hero."
A door closes for Paul and his family. For others, it will soon open.
After Paul's family made the decision to donate his organs, several desperately ill people suddenly had a new lease on life. For many donor families, it's important to meet the people who live because of their loved one's extraordinary gift. And the recipients often want and need to meet the donor family. Here again is Carol Clark.
Hi.
I'm so grateful. Thank you for the gift of life. Thank you for the gift of life.
You're welcome.
I praise God for your decision. Amen.
It was almost as if we knew each other.
Listen to his heart.
You don't mind?
Listen to it.
You know what I used to do? I used to lay my head on his shoulder at nighttime before we'd go to sleep, and I could just hear his heart just pounding in my ear.
A phenomenal spirit and feeling that no one ever imagined even experiencing.
Paul lives on.
He's telling me he loves me.
Paul was he had been a wonderful person.
Oh, God. Wonderful.
Yes.
My best friend. My soulmate.
Right.
My soulmate. And knowing he could keep the two of you together.
Yes.
There's always a purpose.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A part of my husband is now within a part of her husband. And it was almost like an instant connection of us together. And when she said, "Don't you want to hear the heart?" Oh yes, I want to hear the heart. I want to feel it.
And once you experience that feeling, it's just undescribable.
Hearing it and then feeling the pressure of it clicking again, and thinking about how amazing it was to know that the last time I heard it and felt it, it was in Paul, and the next time I heard it and felt it, it was in Calvin. And what an amazing gift that Paul was able to give him.
Thank you.
for the gift of life.
The love that they had to make their decision for the gift of life.
Calvin Jones, who you met there, did ultimately pass away in 2014. His death was unrelated to his heart transplant. However, Paul's gift gave him an extension of life. He and his wife had 2 children after his transplant, adding to Calvin's own family legacy. Chronicle has taken on big issues in our first 10 years. Twice we reported the impact of the opioid crisis in our communities. During Chronicle, State of Addiction, we showed how Interstate 85 is a major pipeline for drugs coming into the upstate. That story was reported by Tim Waller.
This year we were very successful in getting a lot of drugs and a lot of money and a lot of bad guys off of our streets.
And in Spartanburg County, this year's Operation Rolling Thunder raked in 11 pounds of heroin and 18 pounds of cocaine, all in the span of 1 week.
Heroin right now on our streets are selling anywhere from $150 to $200 a gram.
What isn't known is whether drugs seized in operations like this one were bound for the upstate, or if they were just passing through. Wherever these drugs are coming from, or whichever city or town they're headed,
if you are addicted to something like this and you continue with that addiction, you're living a hell on this planet.
85 southbound.
They're rolling through the upstate each and every day, fueling the state of addiction.
Atlanta, to the south of us, is now considered a primary distribution hub for heroin by the DEA. Officials say that's led to an increase in opioid trafficking in our area. Coming up a little later in our hour, another story on the growing opioid crisis, how drugs are impacting families right here at home.
The fabric of the Carolinas, from our global industries to the cities that bring the world here. Coming up next on Chronicle.
In the early 1960s, life along the Georgia-South Carolina border changed forever when the Army Corps of Engineers completed a massive project, the construction of Lake Hartwell. When we aired Chronicle, Lake Hartwell 7 years ago, we looked at the history of the lake, its impact on the people and communities of the upstate, and some of the challenges faced at that time. Here with a look back is Tim Waller.
It's flowing pretty good here.
It used to be just a river.
This is the only part of the river that's left.
A river where Cherokee Indians lived.
You can still see the frames down at the base of these rock piles that are held together with what were called dog spikes.
The Tougaloo River on the South Carolina-Georgia border was a major trading route, says historian Kelly Vickers.
You imagine 100,000 tanned buckskins going out of this area and down the Cherokee Path?
For centuries, the Tougaloo was a direct path to the mighty Savannah River and the ocean beyond. But these days, it runs into a lake the Cherokee would have never imagined. Lake Hartwell changed everything. This is the lake that sprouted up when the Corps of Engineers built a dam near Hartwell, Georgia.
It's our celebration of accomplishment.
This year, that dam is 50 years old.
And it is a monumental event, 50 years in the making.
This may surprise you. Lake Hartwell is among the top 3 most visited lake projects in the country. That's according to the Army Corps of Engineers. One of the biggest economic announcements for South Carolina over the past 20 years was news that broke almost 10 years ago. Boeing announcing that it would put a production facility in North Charleston, a facility that would produce the company's new 787 Dreamliner airplanes. Now, in order to understand just how big Boeing is for the state of South Carolina, you have to understand just how big Boeing is. It's a billion-dollar company with corporate offices in Chicago, but its production facilities are spread out around Seattle in the Pacific Northwest. 9 years ago, our Nigel Robertson traveled to Seattle for Chronicle, landing Boeing.
Welcome to Seattle!
Fasten your seatbelts and prepare for a ride like none other. No, not down here. For this ride, you have to look up.
The passenger experience is going to be second to none.
Lightweight, Fuel efficient and technologically advanced, this is the 787 Dreamliner, Boeing's newest creation.
It is a big deal, and I think the eyes of the world are upon us, and we need to do it right. It needs to be a jewel, and it needs to be just awesome.
The look, the style, the interior.
Kind of like the feeling you'd get when you walk into the worship area of a church.
All of it, Boeing says, designed to give you.
We want to make the space feel as big as possible.
The passenger.
Making it possible for passengers to connect to the flying experience.
A flying experience you won't soon forget.
The 787 is the fastest selling new airplane program in aviation history.
And now that North Charleston facility is up and running, producing these high-tech airliners for clients all around the world. 7 years ago in Chronicle, Carolina Made, we looked at some of the interesting products being made by companies right here in the Carolinas. But that story actually begins with the rich history of manufacturing, from textiles to the technology of the 21st century. Here again, Nigel Robertson.
Take tires, for example. Michelin decided 40 years ago to expand its company outside of Europe. And after looking at a number of cities, both big and small,
Greenville means success.
It chose Greenville.
We took a huge risk in coming here back in the early 1970s. It was not obvious for an automotive manufacturer, automotive parts manufacturer, to come to the Southeast, to come to Greenville.
Willkommen in South Carolina. We are ready to do business with you.
But it was, in fact, just the beginning. Take 1992, for example, when global automaker BMW decided to build its only U.S. manufacturing facility in Spartanburg County.
For BMW, this is a great place for us to be. People here like to manufacture goods. They like to have their hands in making something.
Making even massive turbines that power entire cities around the world.
Right here in Greenville, we design and build a product that's important for the global economy.
The upstate, now a $1 billion economic engine of quality for the world. And yes, it got its start from cotton.
If you want to take the pulse of a community, you head downtown, right to the heart of the city. 5 years ago, we looked at the revitalization that's taken place along 4 main streets across our area. There are some things that Asheville, Anderson, Greenville, and Spartanburg have in common, and things that make each unique. From 5 years ago, here's a look at Chronicle, Main Street, Carolina.
And so there is literally a flight that took place because of the automobiles, the suburbs, and the civil rights movement. There's a veritable tsunami of people leaving what had been this wonderful, vibrant center of the community many decades before.
But over time, each city began to discover its own uniqueness. A uniqueness they embrace today. In Asheville, it's the mountains and the rich history.
And now we're in sort of a second golden age in the history of Asheville.
In Anderson, it's lakes. In Spartanburg, it's the universities. And in Greenville, it's the international business and European influence.
It tells people from the outside that this community has something that's different.
For cities with a rich history, their own unique identity, and a past, all of it taking shape.
I think in any city, there's bound to be something out there that makes you different.
On what we know as Main Street.
How Chronicle has investigated the ongoing issues that impact our lives and communities when Chronicle continues.
September 28, 2016, the day life changed for the small community of Townville in Anderson County. That day, a teen shot and killed his father, then drove to the local elementary school, opening fire on a first-grade class as they were heading to the playground. One of those students, 6-year-old Jacob Hall, was struck and killed. We told the story of that day in Chronicle. WYFF News 4 investigates 23 seconds in Townville. Mandy Gaither reports.
Anderson County 911 case emergency. We have a shooting at Townville Elementary.
I heard gunshots.
A little boy has been shot. The shooter is walking around, and our little boy is downstairs. We've got the school in lockdown.
There were hundreds of law enforcement officers, hundreds. SWAT team members on the roof, EMS.
This is the child's father. We do not know who this man is. He just opened up the first grade door and started shooting.
And I kept screaming, I need Jacob Hall. He's in Miss Hollingsworth's class. Please help me find Jacob Hall.
We have another first grade child who has been hit in the foot.
No one knew if it was over.
Can anybody see where the shooter's at? I don't know where the shooter's at, but the responder has a gun. He's one of our firemen from Townville.
It was a blur, 23 seconds.
Last December, Jesse Osborne pleaded guilty to murdering his father and Jacob Hall. 6 years ago, Chronicle examined the problem of domestic abuse and violence here at home. July 6, 2012 began a bloody weekend in one upstate county. In Oconee County, there were 4 domestic violence-related deaths in less than 24 hours. But out of despair came an amazing story of survival. With that story, here's Mandy Gaither.
Oconee 911, where's your emergency?
My husband has shot me. And my daughter, please hurry. She's 11. I can't get to her bedroom to check on her. Please help me.
Where is your husband at now, ma'am?
He shot himself.
He shot himself?
Yes, please hurry.
Where one bullet went in. I have the ones here on my neck, and then I have this, which is the very first one.
Despite 22 bullet wounds, Kathy found the strength to crawl to her phone for help. A week later, she woke up at Greenville Memorial.
And I remember the first thing I asked my dad was, "Where's Riley?" And he looked at me and he told me she didn't make it. And it was worse than being there it was worse hearing that than it was actually living through what had happened. It made me wish I hadn't been here. I would have given my life for her to still be here.
The sad statistic is that 1 of every 4 women will become a victim of criminal domestic violence. That, according to the CDC, 1 out of every 9 men becomes a victim of violence. 8 years ago, Chronicle took an in-depth look at the state of education in South Carolina. In this 21st century global economy where students must compete with kids in other countries, the pressure to perform is greater than ever. And we've raised our expectations of public schools. But not everyone agrees on just how we should go about improving public education. In areas where jobs and industry are more scarce, school districts don't get as much. In 2005, this disparity between the haves and the have-nots was brought to light in the documentary Corridor of Shame. It showed poverty-ridden schools along South Carolina's I-95 corridor from Georgia to the North Carolina line. Many say until this poverty is addressed, South Carolina's educational performance as a state will continue to suffer. Tim Waller reports.
In the small town of Dillon, the school day begins as routinely as it does in any other part of the state.
All right, let's look at page 70.
First period begins at 8:30 sharp with a typical middle school lesson.
Talking about career strategies.
It's only when you stop and look around
we're doing the best we can.
You begin to see why J.V. Martin Junior High School is different.
We don't know a whole lot of difference. This is all we know.
The white building in the middle of campus is the first clue.
This is the 1896 building.
A South Carolina school
had the horse and buggies and
built more than 100 years ago.
To 115 years old.
It's Library Day.
Still being used.
It was a showplace in its day.
But just barely.
Wiring, technology, everything is a nightmare.
Superintendent Ray Rogers says the whole school is this way, and a nightmare by anyone's standards.
You got wants and needs, but your pocketbook doesn't match it. And that's the problem in a lot of rural South Carolina.
The school featured in that story, J.V. Martin Junior High School in Dillon, has closed since this Chronicle first aired, and a new school was built just a few miles away. Meanwhile, a local preservation group has been trying to raise money to save the historic building. Well, as we told you earlier in this hour, Chronicle twice tackled the problem of opioid addiction. The first time was 3 years ago in a special we called Chronicle Chasing the High. Our investigation showed that heroin was cheaper and more plentiful than it used to be, and that it was being mixed with a powerful opiate that makes it even stronger and more deadly. Tim Waller now with who's using heroin right now in our community.
It's something that snuck up on us. We had no idea it was coming or that
this was going on until some questions started being raised about, hey, have you noticed an increase in your heroin overdoses? And so we got to checking, and sure enough, we had a significant increase in it, and it has steadily been increasing over the last 2 years.
He says the problem these days is that much of the heroin being sold on the street is laced with the powerful painkiller fentanyl. Once exclusively a prescription opioid used to treat severe pain, fentanyl is now being manufactured in clandestine labs and being added to heroin to increase potency and profit. And this is often the result: accidental overdoses from a drug too strong.
There is a great possibility the next time that you inject heroin that you're going to overdose, period.
In our Chronicle, the Greenville County coroner told us so many people are overdosing on fentanyl-laced heroin that fentanyl has been added to their toxicology screening. And in an effort to save lives, more first responders are being equipped with the drug naloxone, which reverses the effects of a heroin overdose.
A hometown hero in baseball and the Carolina legends who built NASCAR. Coming up next on Chronicle.
In 2014, Chronicle told the story of Shoeless Joe Jackson, whose baseball legend was built on the fields of Greenville's Brandon Mill and led to the major leagues. Shoeless Joe Jackson is widely regarded as one of the best baseball players who ever lived. But after a decade in the major leagues, Jackson was accused, along with 7 other members of the Chicago White Sox, of throwing the 1919 World Series. Jackson had good personal series statistics, but because of the so-called Black Sox scandal and his subsequent ban from baseball, Shoeless Joe Jackson is not in baseball's Hall of Fame. After baseball, Jackson returned to Greenville, opened a business, and lived a quiet life. As Beth Brotherton reported in Chronicle, Shoeless Joe, his legacy here in Greenville is that of a hero.
The museum is housed in Joe's former home. It was moved to Greenville's West End in 2006 and opened in 2008.
Come on in.
Arlene Markley is the founder and curator.
We wanted Joe's house to be just that, a home. They call them lint heads. But
the foyer is a showplace for Joe's textile beginnings.
That's Joe right there.
The living room,
made to Joe's specifications.
Home to photographs, baseball bats, and statistics.
There's a picture of Babe Ruth and Joe right there beside you.
The front bedroom, the room where Joe died, is filled with memorabilia from his Chicago years, including a chair from the old Comiskey Park. The kitchen is just as it was when Joe and his wife Kate lived there.
I'd forgotten how much I really loved him until I went into that museum and I walked by the kitchen and then
Bobby Jurgen knew Joe when she was a student at Bob Jones University. Her beloved aunt was married to Jackson's nephew and adopted son. Jurgen says Joe became a Christian in his later years and sold his liquor store. She says he asked her to pray with him just days before his death.
As we approach the 100th anniversary of that 1919 World Series, Joe Jackson remains on baseball's banned list, and his supporters continue their efforts to see that changed. In 2015, Chronicle, Racing in the Carolinas, highlighted the connection between NASCAR and the Carolinas. NASCAR is a multi-billion-dollar spectator sport, but it hasn't always been that way. NASCAR held its first strictly stock series race in 1949 in Charlotte, North Carolina. And in 1950, NASCAR's first super speedway opened at Darlington International Raceway in South Carolina. But racing cars and the need for speed go back even further in the Carolinas. Here's Brad Freilich.
The heart of racing beats here.
You know, when I started racing, there wasn't no paved race tracks or nothing like that.
In the 1940s, moonshiners began organizing races on dirt with souped-up cars they used to run from the law.
I never did think anybody could outrun me driving.
Junior Johnson roars down the pit road.
Nobody had any experience. Junior Johnson didn't have any experience. Lee Petty didn't have any experience in the race car.
The competition of building cars and motors and stuff like that really took a hold of me.
From bootlegging to stock car racing, the biggest names in the sport call the Carolinas home.
But it's a great story. We all know about the moonshining days and where the fast drivers came from.
The king himself,
He gives me a hard time.
grew up in Level Cross, North Carolina.
It was a very country setting and still pretty much that way.
His childhood home and the racing shop where he was raised is a shrine to racing history.
And one more connection between NASCAR and the Carolinas. The NASCAR Hall of Fame is located in downtown Charlotte. And 3 of the inaugural class, Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, and Junior Johnson, were Carolina born and bred. In 1996, the world turned its eyes to the South as the Centennial Olympic Games were held in Atlanta, drawing world-class athletes to our region. On the 20th anniversary of the Summer Olympic Games in Atlanta, we looked back at how the city was able to host the Games and the impact of the Olympics 20 years on. In Chronicle, Back to Atlanta, one of the stories we told was of Wayne Dickert, a kayaker from the mountains of western North Carolina. Here now is Brad Freilich with that story.
Water flows down the Nantahala River like the spirit flows through the voice of Wayne Dickert. The people here identify with him because he is one of them. They know him, and some know him as an Olympic legend.
Walking into the opening ceremonies, for me certainly was a bit of an overwhelming experience. You get to the top and the crowd's chanting USA, 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 and you kind of look and you're just overwhelmed by it all a little bit. You know, as we were walking down in, I went, oh boy, what do I do now?
Wayne Dickert paddled for the 1996 U.S. Olympic kayak team.
And of course the race bib that we wore, and then this is a little handkerchief that we wore.
Dickert was 37 years old in 1996.
Wow, 20 years ago. It's kind of hard to believe it.
Which made him the oldest first-time Olympian in the Atlanta Games.
The road to the Olympics was a long one for me, you know, starting later in life than most Olympians do, for sure.
There was no medal from the Olympics in Atlanta, but for Dickert, life and the river have become so much more.
From major community improvements to new facilities that are still being used today, the Olympics made a lasting mark on the region. And Billy Payne, the president and CEO of the Atlanta Olympic effort, went on to spend 11 years as chairman of Augusta National Golf Club, which sponsors another world-class sporting event, the Masters.
The man known as America's pastor and the American heroes from right here in the Carolinas. Coming up next on Chronicle.
Before he passed away last year, the Reverend Billy Graham was one of our neighbors, spending most of his adult life living on a mountaintop home near Montreat, east of Asheville. Billy Graham was often called America's pastor, one of the preeminent faith leaders of the past 60 years. His ministry took teaching the gospel to millions at his crusades, speaking in person and through his television ministry. But in retirement, it was back to the North Carolina mountains where he lived a quiet life. One of his weekly appointments was with a pastor, his pastor. As Michael Cogdill tells us, the Reverend Don Wilton may have known Billy Graham better than just about anybody.
Because I think Mr. Graham sees himself not dying, but he sees himself coming alive. His favorite subject with me is Jesus rose from the dead and he's alive. That's his favorite subject.
At least once a week now, Don Wilton drives an hour up a mountain and shares Billy Graham's latter days at home.
And I relish going to sit with him and to be with him and to be touched by him and his life and his testimony.
And it gets very personal.
He said, at my funeral, I don't want you to mention my name because it's not about me, it's only about the Lord.
The Reverend Wilton has written the Reverend Graham's funeral sermon, had to cite God's use of Moses just to get permission to use the name.
But with only one purpose, and that is to share the love of the Lord Jesus Christ through your life. He thought for a minute, he said, I can't argue with that. You've got my permission.
The Reverend Billy Graham passed away on February 21st of last year. Mourners paid their respects as he lay in honor in the U.S. Capitol and at the Billy Graham Library in Charlotte. Reverend Graham was buried on the library grounds next to his wife Ruth, who died in 2007. The cost of freedom. What do those words really mean? 2 years ago, we explored the answers in Chronicle, The Cost of Freedom. We remembered the patriots, members of our armed services who served our country so well. For generations, families in this great nation of ours, including the Carolinas, have paid the price, some more than others. Here now, Tim Waller.
We have always served.
Yeah, right here, this is the Purple Heart.
91-year-old Jack Durham is among the oldest still living to remind us of the sacrifice.
I thought, man, this is a dream. I'm just having a nightmare. I'm going back to sleep. I wake up, I'm going to be in my bunk.
He was lucky in one sense. The war in Europe had just ended. Hitler and his Nazi regime were no more. Durham's job was to help deliver fuel to the many army vehicles that were spread across France once the fighting stopped.
I remember exactly that moment. Never forget it. Never forget it.
The 20-year-old soldier, who was a world away from Pickens, was walking through a field that had been cleared of mines, or so he thought.
It's not like a gunshot, like that. I mean, like explosion going. It's a lot different from a gunshot, you know.
When Durham woke up, he was lying in a crater that wasn't there just a few seconds before. And there was something else.
And I looked over to my left, and there lay my leg. And it had a brand new shoe on it. I hadn't worn it long, and I wanted that shoe. I don't know why I won't get that new shoe.
For nearly 250 years, Americans have answered the call to service. To the men and women in uniform, past, present, and future, we thank you. May we never forget your sacrifice for our great nation. Chronicle told another story of sacrifice in 2015. On the 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War, we looked at the war that divided a country, changing it forever. One of the stories we told focused on the H.L. Hunley, a submarine that made history on a dark February night in Charleston Harbor. For 136 years, the submarine sat on the floor of the harbor after it sank in 1864. It remained there, entombing its crew until 2000, when it was raised from the ocean floor. The effort to painstakingly remove a century and a half of treasure and debris to preserve it and solve its mysteries has been an ongoing project. Carol Clark now with what the Hunley has revealed to scientists and historians so far.
The biggest question that people have is, why is it taking so long?
15 years of work to strip the silt and shells.
The submarine decides when it's going to be ready.
This is a view few see up close, the beautifully streamlined sub crafted with fins, held together with nuts and bolts and straps of iron. And this was found too.
And it had more information than we thought. It wasn't just a coin that was deformed. He had it inscribed with the date of the attack when he was shot. And then he had it inscribed with "My Life Preserver," with his initials GED. For George E. Dixon.
Legend had it George Dixon always carried this gold coin given to him by his fiancée, Queenie Bennett. It deflected a bullet at Shiloh and saved his life. It was found in the sub where he sat.
It's history speaking to us directly.
Recovering gold is easy. Preserving cast and wrought iron is tough. Without treatment, the sub could collapse into a pile of rust. That's why the sub is kept wet with chemicals.
Just, breaking through to that surface, the original surface, and seeing that for the first time, that was obviously just, the breathtaking experience.
The conservators work on the Hunley during the week, but on weekends, the public is welcome to view the Hunley and its artifacts, such as the gold coin. It's housed at the Clemson University Restoration Institute in North Charleston.
Extending Southern hospitality to the world, from a grand estate in the North Carolina mountains to a small mill village decked out for the holidays. Next on Chronicle.
Nestled on 8,000 acres in the shadow of Mount Pisgah in western North Carolina sits the family estate of George and Edith Vanderbilt. More than a century ago, in the heart of the Gilded Age, the Vanderbilts opened Biltmore to friends and family during the Christmas season. Now, this private estate is open to the public, and anyone who visits Biltmore walks away with that sense of hospitality and a basic sense of how this all started. To truly understand the history of Biltmore and the family who lived there, historians say you must look past this magnificent estate to a time when it was little more than a mountain and a man with a vision. Tim Waller has our story.
A 175,000 square foot mansion on nearly 200 square miles of land. Yet George Vanderbilt, the wealthy heir to his grandfather's railroad fortune, had smaller aspirations when he first arrived here in 1888.
George Vanderbilt started off wanting to build a modest home. I think the earliest architectural drawings show like a 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 square foot house.
That idea flew out the window when Richard Morris Hunt, the famous architect, and Frederick Law Olmsted, the designer of New York's Central Park, were asked by Vanderbilt to consult in the design. Both Hunt and Olmsted saw opportunity.
And I think both Olmsted and Hunt saw in George Vanderbilt the perfect client.
They got their wish. Over the next 6 years, this architectural masterpiece rose from the ground. A 250-room French chateau with 35 bedrooms, 43 bathrooms, and a library with 23,000 books. Even the drive to the house created a surprise for Vanderbilt's wealthy friends from up north.
You didn't know where you were. You were 3 or 4 miles from the railroad station. You know, you're in the middle of nowhere. These people who came out of Newport or New York probably thought they'd just been beamed to another planet. And then they turn the corner and there's the front of the house. It's like, oh my gosh, we've arrived somewhere special. You know?
George Vanderbilt's daughter Cornelia and her husband John Cecil opened Biltmore to public tours in 1930. And today, more than 1 million people visit the country's largest private estate each year. Of course, Christmas season is the most popular at Biltmore, and in Chronicle's inaugural year, we anchored our Christmas Chronicle from the Biltmore estate. Over these past 10 years, we've brought you 3 Chronicles during the Christmas holiday season, so choosing just one holiday story to show you in this anniversary program was an incredibly tough task. But we settled on one that featured a town that was so full of the holiday season, people who live there bill themselves as Christmastown. People in McAdenville, North Carolina started a Christmas light tradition back when Dwight Eisenhower was president. Today, you can still go to that little town near Charlotte and feel the glow of the Christmas season. Here now is Michael Cogdill.
This December, the little mill town.
We only use the true Christmas colors of white, green, and red.
Isn't it beautiful? Just how much spirit there is, the friendliness of the people here.
Will draw about 600,000 from all over.
I'm from Argentina.
Jackson, Mississippi.
Rogers, Arkansas. Nashville, Tennessee. Charleston, South Carolina.
Feliz Navidad.
The same cotton mill family paying the light bill.
I'm going to tell you a little secret.
So just about every corner of McAdenville can live up to the name Christmastown.
You would be surprised how many people go by and take a bulb out for a souvenir. A lot of bulbs are replaced regular, but nobody complains about it.
Who would complain when the children wear a face like that?
You see those little kids face pressed against the window, and the eyes about the size of $1, a silver dollar, then you know what it's all about.
What a wonderful gift from the people of McAdenville, creating memories that will last for generations to come.
Ready for an adventure? We take you on a journey from mountains to sea. Next on Chronicle.
In 2010, on the 75th anniversary of the Blue Ridge Parkway, we decided to take a ride along the 469-mile highway through some beautiful mountain vistas. Chronicle, an Appalachian journey, took us back to the beginnings of this roadway. The parkway is, at its heart, an American highway, one born of hard times. Building it put people to work during the Great Depression. And as our Michael Cogdill shows us today, the parkway is still helping people rise to meet some American high country like no other.
Native music and all, the parkway helps to lift hearts and minds literally a mile high. Among the 26 tunnels here along the Blue Ridge Parkway, 25 of them are in North Carolina. And outside those tunnels, notice something here, right along the edge of the road, no white lines at all. That's by design, just a gentle reminder, there is to be nothing between you and the view.
It's all about being able to see those views. That's what this road's about.
With that devotion, Gary Johnson.
Farms, industry, cities, and mountains.
So certainly here in the upstate, to have mountains, to have the kind of greenery that we have, to have the beautiful multiple chain of lakes is such a visual high that really motivates and captures people's imaginations.
If you travel via the state's highways and back roads, you get one perspective of the Palmetto State. But if you want to get an idea of the vast beauty around us, from the rolling hills of the upstate to the coastal plain, you have to go above.
And when you're looking at where do I want to spend my life? Where do I want to put my roots? Who are the kind of people that we'd like to hang out with? You better be looking at us because we're pretty darn good.
Above the comings and goings of life down below.
The beauty of South Carolina directly translates into the quality of life.
A quality of life on display to the world.
South Carolina is such an interesting state. It's incredibly beautiful. We have the foothills, the rolling foothills. We have these amazing waterfalls. We have a beautiful coastline. Tourists come from all around the world to enjoy the assets that we have here. South Carolina is not going to be a well-kept secret much longer.
It's a wonderful state with a wonderful community, and it has always had such a great sense of community. I mean, sometimes we take that into being our own country, but South Carolina is a great community story, and we keep working to make it better. So I always think our outlook is good.
Above, where the sound of the helicopter engine provides the heartbeat of the beauty before you, the beauty of South Carolina from above.
Beautiful South Carolina, wow.
We come now to the end of our journey through the first 10 years of Chronicle. It's been a pleasure to take you to fascinating places, to introduce you to hundreds of interesting people, and to examine issues we needed to share with you. But we're just getting started. There are many more stories to chronicle in the months and years to come. We thank you for being a part of our journey, and thank you for joining us for 10 years of Chronicle. I'm Jane Robileau. Goodbye.